He tells the neighbors he never has clothes on. Summertime, I'm gonna be almost naked. Believe me when I tell you.
But you have a pool, right?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
We have a pool too, and it is nice to just go out there and chill.
Oh, I love it.
So when you, and like I said before, you know, I don't have like a ton of guests on the podcast only because, you know, my wife said this last night. I don't know who she was talking to, but maybe my father-in-law, but they were like, you know, you need to get, and I'm like, I can't talk to somebody I don't genuinely connect with, you know? So I could get more people on, you know, and I don't want to do that, you know? So I have people on like you that I think people need to know about is out there because you have you're just a genuine guy, and I know you've heard that before, and I think like you said, it's maturity. I think, you know, I'm still figuring how to be a man out. I'm still figuring out how to be a dad and figure out how to be a husband and figure out how to run multiple businesses, and you make it look so easy because you don't care, and I envy that because there's parts of me where I'm like, I do care, where I'm like, oh, like I need, you know, but there's also this part of me where I'm like, I don't care, so it depends on what mood I'm in, but you genuinely, like consistently, I love how you just, by the way, I told you when I picked you up from the airport, my staff call you a menace, but in a good way. They go, oh, Larry's just a menace. He got on last night after a couple drinks, whatever, and they loved you. Like, when I said, well, first of all, when I text you, you go, who's this? I'm like, all right, Larry's definitely not coming on the podcast. So then you're like, oh, yeah, sure, I'll come. And I told my staff, I go, yeah, Larry Cronin's going to come on the podcast. And they were all like, super excited.
I appreciate that.
I told them, I'm like, you know, it'd be nice to get Caesar on. And they're like, yeah, it'd be good. I'm like, Larry's coming on. And they were like, Larry's coming on.
That makes me feel very good.
Well, you're great at what you do. You're passionate about what you do. You're a good person.
Thanks, Tom.
You're welcome. And I'm not just saying that, you know, for any other reason, but sincerity. And it comes across. Like when I remember this one video, and you and I would never be able to guess which one it was, but, and we'll talk about this in a minute, about e-collar and the work that you've done, because that's something that I really enjoy too, your book and everything that you've done with e-collar stuff. But there was this one video you had with this, I don't remember what dog it was, many years ago. And I think you were putting out a post to basically battle somebody saying that e-collars were abusive.
Panis na yan. Kamote! Kamote naman.
Try mo to.
Ang mura naman.
Dito ka na. Sa mapapamura ka talaga. Move it. Discarding tapat.
Abusive or whatever. And I remember you were doing these basic tap and turns. The dog would be out on like a 15-foot in your driveway. Long line was dropped, and you'd tap, and you'd say, you know, dog come. The dog would come wagging the tail, and you'd come back this way, and you'd be like, man, look how this dog is having a terrible time out here. This dog hates this. Somebody please call the cops. Like, you were going off.
Yeah, I kind of remember.
And I was dying laughing. I'm like, this is just so funny because you have this way of like going about the way that you train that makes it so entertaining and so genuine again. And I think it's cool that you film on it. I envy the ability to do that mentally, because like, of course I could. I'd be like, oh, here's this, but I just remember that one time you had that puppy out. I think it was a younger dog, and you were just tap and turn, and you were like, man, just look at this dog having a terrible time. And it was just such a funny approach to the way that you trained. But when did you start getting into remote collar work? Like, when did that come into your life?
You know,
'cause you have a book for people who don't know.
yeah, so I hated the e-collars because I grew up a hunter. I'm a fanatical hunter, deer hunter especially, right? When I was a young kid, I hunted birds too. Pheasant hunt was real big, and this upstate New York, New Jersey, that's where I'm from, where I hunted. But back then, like, this is going back like to the beginning, e-collars, you know, I saw all the bird dogs out in the woods that had e-collars on. They were very, you
Ganun.
not what we have today. They look very different. Big, scary looking
Wait.
electric chairs around the dog's neck, right?
Yeah.
But I had never seen one out in the woods that responded well. I would watch a lot of screaming and a lot of yelping and the dogs running away from their owner and their owners just screaming and blasting these dogs. So that was what I knew of e-collars. That's it. So I was 100%, I would never, it didn't make sense to me, right? I didn't know nothing back then either. And then somewhere,
Dito.
I think it was in the early 2000s, maybe 2005, 2006,
But,
I started seeing certain people
but, dito.
big in the e-collar world
Ito,
doing
but-
different things, and I was watching these dogs,
But,
and I was like,
mean-
that's not what I watched as a kid, that's not what I saw, so I
But-
just became really
See.
curious and really interested, and I started just consuming
Out.
everything I could, but it was hard to find stuff even back then, right? The
Yeah.
internet and like YouTube was just starting
Wait.
to come around when I started watching this stuff, and I consumed everything I could find. So I was just crazy curious. And so that got me out, going to see different people and working with different people and seeing that things were very different now from what I remember. So the first dog I ever trained on an e-collar was my own dog,
Please.
but he was already like 4 years old
Ay,
and
down.
really well trained, right?
It was a hunting dog?
I
No,
need
it was a
down.
Rottweiler.
Okay.
And even
Understand.
after I trained him, I still wasn't crazy about things
Down.
were going because
I need down.
even using lower level stimulation to introduce it, we weren't using
Down.
food back then. That still wasn't a thing, right? I noticed with a lot of the dogs were
Understand.
fine right from
No,
the
no,
start,
no,
but a lot of the
don't play.
dogs, there was still a lot of confusion.
Down.
And some of them would look down in the dumps for like 3 days. You
Understand.
know, there's no reason for that. But
Let me
when
see.
you're learning from people, you trust them and you believe them. And they tell you
Huh?
that's normal. Give them 3 days and they'll go back to normal, which was accurate. After 3 days, my dog went back to looking normal, and I was like, okay. But there was so much pressure used, so much e-collar
Okay.
usage, right? Just constant e-collar usage
And you
throughout
see-
the day for everything you wanted the dog to do. And I knew,
I understand.
again, it was much better than it used to be,
I
but
need
it
down.
still didn't make sense to me, you know?
Down.
So you dig a little deeper and you start finding better people and you start learning and you're like, okay, and you just keep changing and evolving and making it better,
Yep.
training and better for the dog. Better training, better for the dog constantly.
No, 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 dito.
But then with all the everyday people I was working with, I realized there's a way that a dog person can do things very efficiently that's going to be great on the dog. You're going to get great results. But that doesn't benefit the everyday dog owner who's going to go out and grab this tool, which is going to happen. No matter what people say, dog owners are going to go buy e-collars no matter what, all right? You can't treat someone who doesn't know how to walk a dog on a leash the same as a professional dog trainer, what you or I or another trainer can do with any tool. You can't do it. It doesn't work. There has to be a lot of education there. So when I started